believes I can't sleep.
It's time to listen to Courtney at last on the Ramblings of an Insomniac podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Ramblings of an Insomniac. I am laying in bed. I am sitting here recording a podcast while laying in bed. Do you know why? Because quite literally, I have been up for over 24 hours. I have not even had 1 hour of sleep. I was going to do a podcast in the middle of the night at 3 a.m, and I was going to do one at 5 this morning. But my partner was asleep, and I didn't want to go into a different part of the house because I felt like it was so echoey and he could hear me. And as you guys know, as I've discussed, I just can't stand doing podcasts when other people are home. Even though, he probably wouldn't have heard me. He probably wouldn't have woken up. But I felt like I was going to wake him up because the house was quiet and it was echoey. And no matter where I went, I felt like if I'm doing a podcast, he would hear me. But B, sometimes our dogs bark and stuff, and I just got weird and all insecure. And what sucked was I was really in the mood to do a podcast because I had a lot of things keeping me up. A lot. It's been interesting. So yeah, like I always do, I always am just like, hi, welcome to Ramblings of an Insomniac. And then I'm like, boom, I need to stop doing that. I keep saying this. I keep saying that I need to quit just like introducing myself and then literally just getting right into it, like just gung ho right into it. I need to like take a breath and segue a little bit better. But since I started this podcast, I feel like I've made a lot of improvements. I still need more. I really do want to start recording sometimes from my office, but then you guys can't hear like the background and like the crickets and the people, which is kind of a big part of this podcast, but I have to get my computer fixed, so it's not working right now. Um, Gosh, okay. I don't even know where to begin or how much I want to share. That's been my biggest issue with this podcast also is that there are so many things that I've decided not to share. A lot of things that have kept me awake that I have decided not to share. However, I keep going back and forth because I feel like they're incredibly important things. Um, I think there are things that would really help others that other people might be going through. And it might be nice for people to go, oh my God, it's nice to know somebody else has been there and understands. But I also don't want to give away too much information about my life. But then I'm like, okay, but this is my journal. It's my personal journal. And that's kind of the whole point. It's sort of like a therapeutic thing for me, is to kind of get things off my chest. I don't know. So I've been going back and forth, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach these things and what I want to share. But I'll start by saying this. Again, as I've discussed so often, another large reason why I started this was during COVID. I had moved my mom from her home to be closer to me. She was starting to get signs of dementia and just unable to take care of herself. And she lived 3 hours from me, and I wanted her to be close. Unfortunately, it was right at the same time that it was in 2021, and it was in October of that year. And so things were a little crazy at that time. And in Oregon, being the ridiculous state that it is, it had so many restrictions for COVID. And as we all know, I won't get into any of that, but the restrictions that they had in Oregon were pretty stringent. And restriction is a good word. It was more like prison sentences. And so it ended up preventing me from seeing my mom. And the entire point of her moving down here was so that I could see her, because she went from being 3 hours away from me to 40 minutes away from me. And I ended up not being able to see her at all. I mean, I could see her for like 3 days. A month is about what it ended up being. And her dementia got worse and worse. And originally I could visit her, but then the times I couldn't visit her, she was still able to make phone calls. She was still able to dial my number. And so we could talk on the phone at least. And then she ended up not being able to even know my number. So caregivers would help her, but then she didn't really know who she was talking to and stuff. So it was too hard for her to be on the phone. And the times that my mom could use the phone, the biggest thing she would say was she wanted me to save her. She wanted me to save her, and she didn't understand why she had to be alone. She didn't understand why she had to die alone, and that she was scared. She was scared to death, and all she wanted was to hold me and see me and to have me come see her and comfort her. And the state of Oregon and fucking Kate Brown and fucking Biden, um, they have blood on their hands. The Biden administration, what a bunch of evil, sociopathic, I mean, I don't, I that those aren't even close to words. They're worse than sociopaths. They're worse than evil. I don't even know what is worse than just pure Satan, pure evil. I don't even know, but they destroyed so many lives. And what infuriates me is that they do it all for money. These poor elderly people died alone and scared from money. People lost their moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and sisters and uncles and aunts and friends for money. People died scared to death and alone for money. I had to hear the fear in my mom's voice, and I couldn't do anything about it. And so I got sick of it, and I called a million radio stations and I called a million media stations. And because, again, this is the lovely state of Oregon, everybody was like, oh, I think you're being dramatic. I actually had a news anchor say that to me, by the way. I think you're being dramatic. Did that really happen? I'm sure they have their reasons. They have their policies for a reason. It's in the best interest of the elderly. It's in the best interest of the people in Oregon. Is it? It's in people's best interest to die alone and scared. It's in people's best interest to see each other through a window. It's in people's best interest to not say goodbye to their loved ones. Interesting, because so many people died in nursing homes from being depressed and alone and scared. And my mom did not deserve, I have so much guilt The amount of PTSD I have and guilt that I have over the fact that I insisted and made my mom move here because she was unable to take care of herself at home. She loved that home. My dad died in that home, but they bought that home together, and it was a beautiful home with a beautiful view. And nobody should have to be ripped out of their home that they paid for, that they worked hard for, and they should get to die in and enjoy. And then to be taken out of it and put with a bunch of strangers while strangers wipe your butt. And strangers got to see my mom. Strangers got to visit my mom. That's the kicker. So I could have picked up my mom and taken her to a restaurant or a grocery store as long as she wore a mask. She could touch carts. She could be around a million people. Strangers and stuff could be around her. But then, and I could bring her back to the facility after she had been out amongst all the germs. And then she could bring those germs back into the facility. And I had to drop her off. But I wasn't allowed to go into her private room, just the two of us with the door closed where I can wash my hand and it's just my germs and her germs, not a bunch of people. And she's had the vaccination. And then caregivers could come in, nurses could come in, doctors could come in, housekeepers could come in, the receptionist could come in, CNAs could come in, the person dropping off, the dietitians could come in. But I asked her daughter couldn't come in because I guess my cooties are different. So all these people could touch my mom and see my mom, but just not me. So I said, fuck you. And I said, hi, I'm coming in. And they said, we'll call the police. And I said, all right, you do you, Scotty P. You do what you need to do. I'm going to see my mom. If you're going to throw me in prison because I'm going to see my dying mom, then you do what you feel is best. And surprisingly, they did not call the cops. And I did that 3 different times. I was just begging them to call my bluff. As in, I'm going to do it no matter what. I called their bluff. But then they cracked down on that. And my mom, as I said, I couldn't take my mom out because she had severe COPD. And then she had double hip surgery a while back and had a lot of complications. And then unfortunately gained weight, had COPD and was severely, severely incontinent. And so I couldn't take her out and about because she didn't have a scooter. We tried to get her a scooter. That's the other thing. Tried to get my mom one of those hover rounds or scooters. It took me 9 months because my mom was on Social Security, but she also had, I always get Medicaid and Medicare. She had the one that she paid for, that she worked for, that she earned, not the state. And my mom was paying for it out of pocket, but you know what? It took 9 fucking months for her to get that thing. And by the time she got it, my mom had dementia so bad, she couldn't fucking use it. She didn't know how to use it. And she'd lost a lot of mobility and dexterity in her hands. So she couldn't use the scooter. Well, I'm here to tell you that when you go to grocery stores and stuff, there's maybe 1 or 2 scooters. And usually the people that are using those 1 or 2 scooters are people that are incredibly obese, that can walk and should walk. Out of all the fucking people in the world that should be walking, it's obese people. But instead they get their fat fucking asses on the scooters. Or it's people dinking around that, again, don't need the scooters, but are being lazy and using them instead of people that actually need them. So there's a limited amount of scooters when you go to grocery stores and stuff, and the very limited amount they are, 75% of the time, people that should not be using them are using them. So I couldn't take my mom out. Well, then they ended up ixnaying that policy anyway. So me personally, I wasn't able to take my mom out and I wasn't allowed to visit her. And then she ended up not being able to use a phone because she had dementia so bad. So my mom basically just died alone, and I brought my mom here to die pretty much alone. And I will never forgive myself or Oregon for that. And I have a lot of PTSD. And I stayed up a lot crying last night And the fact that we have this government that is getting away with, first of all, lying in every way imaginable. It wasn't a vaccine, it was a therapeutic. Vaccines are supposed to prevent you from getting a disease. A therapeutic means that it just is, if you get that disease, like the flu or COVID, it just minimizes the effects. So you just don't get as sick as everybody else that doesn't get the therapeutic. That's their theory anyway. As we all know, they just lied about everything. It wasn't a vaccination, it was a therapeutic. And people just don't have logic anymore. I don't know when logic became such a hot commodity. It's like a unicorn. It's very, very rare for people to have it, it seems. But there's so many gullible idiots running around. I swear that's where Darwin just really needs to come. I know that's why Mother Nature has hurricanes and natural disasters, because she's just like, fuck this place. You guys are all crazy. We need to weed out some of you. It's terrible to say, but my God, I'm just getting so tired of the path this world is on right now. When did being entitled, selfish, lazy, uneducated, judgmental, um, sociopaths become a good thing, something to pattern ourselves after? When did being a whore become something you applaud? When did it become okay to mutilate children's bodies or sell them out for sex? Why is this commonplace? Why am I even saying this sentence? Why am I even talking about sex trafficking and mutilation of children's bodies? Why is that something that people even discuss like it's just some talking about how's your day? There's transgender people now shooting up the place. Oh, go figure. Really? You mean someone with a severe mental disability is shooting up churches and shit? Huh. You mean the gun didn't jump off of the shelf, somehow roll its way into a church and start randomly shooting on its own? You mean it took a mentally unstable person to do that? Oh, wait, you mean transgender people are a little mentally unstable? Oh, wow, that is such a shock. No one has been saying that. I just, I don't know when all of these things became normal and okay and acceptable. Maps. So we're applauding pedophiles now. So we're applauding children being used for sex trafficking, the mutilation of children's private areas. We're promoting pedophilia. We're promoting um, being uneducated, like especially in Oregon. Again, you don't have to know basic English or math to graduate anymore. So we're promoting being idiots. We have our government quite literally trying to kill its own citizens. Literally, the government is trying to kill its own citizens. Let me repeat. Our government that we voted, not me. I didn't vote on this, on the Biden administration, nor did I vote for the Obama administration. I did vote for him the first time, I'm not going to lie. His first 4 years, I did vote on him, but I did not vote for him the second time around. But our government doesn't really matter if you're Democrat or Republican. Our government in general, Republicans really aren't any better, honestly. They're not any better. Politicians are politicians are politicians. And they're all trying to kill us so that they can make a buck. It really is like the movie Don't Look Up. Hollywood are a bunch of entitled. We worship people that are disgusting, that dress provocatively, that sell their bodies for money. When you are dancing around like Cardi B and you're getting paid to show off your coochie and to show off your boobs and to sing about sex, you're just a high-paying hooker. You may not be sleeping around, but you're showing the whole world your hoo-ha. That makes you a whore. Oh, and is your marriage not working, Cardi? Oh, I don't know why. You're such a catch. I'm sure men love it when their wives or fiancés show off their boobs and body parts to the entire universe. Why would any man have a problem with that? I don't know. And why wouldn't your relationship work when you sit there and grind on another woman and constantly talk about sex and degrade yourself? Clearly, as much as you say you have self-esteem, you obviously don't. And you're uneducated as a motherfucker. And ugly, Cardi. Not that you'll ever listen to this, but you are not somebody that anybody should aspire to look up to. And yet, we're teaching our kids to aspire and look up to women showing off every bit of their body and talking about every bit of their body and talking about what they will do to other men. Yeah, we should totally promote that. Sounds like a great plan. What the fuck is wrong with people? How is all of this just normal now? I don't know, but that's something that's been keeping me up. I stayed up. I just will get up a lot in the middle of the night and cry and try to talk to my mom and wish and hope to God that somehow I could will her to be next to me again. And I think of all those things that I've said to her in my life. And everybody does this. Everybody does this. And everybody warns us against this. Treat people well while they're alive because you'll regret it when they're not. Treat people well when they're alive because you will regret it when they're not. And you're like, yeah, we all know this. But yet we still treat each other like shit because we're humans, because we can't help it. We have a brain, we have hormones, and brains and hormones make us feel and have emotions. And our emotions are not always rational and not always correct. And that's part of being human, is that we're not always rational and we're not always correct. But regret is that's a real enema. It can really stop you up. It can really plug you up. It can give you a lot of fucking intestinal problems, Because regret is, it's a bitch. And when you say something to somebody, it's out there. And even when you apologize, it's still out there, And we forget that. Again, we all have our days, of course. We're all going to have times that we don't phrase things correctly, and maybe we don't say things the way that we intend them. And again, we're humans, and humans have brains, and we have hormones, and therefore we're just this crazy machine that malfunctions sometimes. But when you call people names, especially if you do it more than once, it resonates, it sticks with people. And then you don't want to later on in life be like, fuck, I said that to this person. And just regret is a real constipator. I can't tell you how many times my mom wanted me to just sit next to her and hang out with her. And I thought that me cleaning her house and running errands for her was better. I thought that I was helping her. I didn't think I was doing her a favor. I thought that I was helping. But again, it's the whole love language thing. She didn't want that. She wanted me just to sit next to her and talk to her. And I regret so much not doing that more often. I went to visit her all the time. I drove 3 hours one way, so 6 hours on my 2 days off all the time to see her. But I spent it cleaning her house and doing errands. And then like at night, I would hang out with her. So then I would leave and she'd be like, I don't want you to go. I want to hang out with you. And in my head, I'm like, we just hung out. And to a parent, it's like, if you only see each other, once a month, a couple of hours of hanging out isn't anything. A couple of days of hanging out isn't anything. To a parent, there's not you want more time. And to a kid, you're like, you think that your time is so valuable and you think, it is valuable. It is very valuable, but you don't prioritize. You have different priorities. And it's not to be selfish. It's just that when you're younger, you don't realize how precious your family is. So your priorities are different. And people tell you, just remember, you're not always going to have that person. And again, you think to yourself, well, I know that, but you don't really know that. It doesn't really sink in until you don't have that person. And now I think of all these times that my mom just wanted me just to be there. And I wasn't. And the times that she begged me and I had to hear her voice and know how scared she was and I couldn't do anything about it. It's such a helpless feeling and I can't tell you how angry I am at our system. So guilt has really been doing a number on me. And just thinking about being a parent in general and how there's those different stages of your life where you have kids. For me, I was young. I was 19 and 23 when I had my kids. So I was a kid. I was young. But of course, you have to grow up. And depending on the environment you're raised in and depending on just so many factors, of course, go into what type of parent you are. And I used to always say, I want to be the opposite of my mom. I don't want to be anything like her because, my mom was an alcoholic and she was married 3 different times and she was usually gone drinking or they were having parties at the house and we'd have a ton of adults drinking. The house was always filled with adults drinking and smoking and people would pass out with cigarettes and people would fight. It was just, there was cops all the time. But my mom would always say, didn't we have so much fun? Didn't we have so much fun? We were always partying. We were always laughing. We were always having a good time. And I was like, I was a kid. You were partying and laughing because you were drunk. And you were partying and I was a kid and I had to take care of myself. I got myself on the bus. I did my own homework. I made my own food and I was either home alone a lot in the middle of the night. But then I look back and I'm like, but I know my mom meant well. I know she loved me. I know she loved me more than anything in the world. And I don't, alcoholism obviously makes you a different person. And I think she was raised with parents that weren't the best. I love my grandma, but she was kind of a hard lady. So my mom wasn't really raised around a lot of coochie coo, lovey lovey. She had a really kind of bad background, bad childhood. So you kind of learn from what you're raised in. And my mom always thought that it was a good time, but everywhere we went, it was always drinking. And my parents, like I said, my mom was married 3 different times. And the person that I call my dad, the one that she was with the longest, they used to fight as in like physical and throw things and punch each other and throw things at each other and drink and drive all the time and speed with me in the car. And I had a camper that I slept in at the Moose Lodge in Camas. There's a little camper because there was a park because my parents would be drinking and they knew they wouldn't be able to come home. And so there was like a little RV park kind of next to it. And they got a little RV and that's where I lived by myself at like 9 years old. 8 years old, while they would drink until 2, 3 in the morning and stumble home and fight. But so I thought, I'm not going to be that parent. But then part of me is like, again, in her eyes, she was like, it's just one big party because she was drunk. So she looked at it like, my mom was one of two ways when she drank. She either would tell you she loved you a million times to the point that you're like, oh my God, and she was super happy and laughing and I love you, and laughy, or she was mean, spiteful, and jealous and would go out of her way to start a fight. And you never knew which one you were going to get. But when you got the happy one, she looked at it like it's just one big fun party. And even though I was young, she didn't see anything wrong with the fact that there was one big party. Because in her eyes, she's like, I'm having a good time. Well, I was a kid around a whole bunch of adults that were drunk all the time. And I felt like I had to constantly take care of all of them. And I had to grow up real quick. And so I thought, that's the type of parent I don't want to be. However, I know my mom loved me so much. I never ever doubted that. And there was times my mom and I laughed. She had the best laugh in the world. I would give anything to hear that laugh again. And I think now being a parent, I'm like, it's hard being a parent. And I hate it when people criticize so much people's parenting because it's like, fuck you. Being a parent is hard and not every kid is the same and not every situation is the same. And again, we are human. We are not meant to be a robot. We are not a robot. We are flesh. We are going to make mistakes like humans do. I don't care who you are. You're not a perfect parent. Nobody is. And again, when you're young, you think that you just are going to be just the best parent and not screw up. And let me tell you, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to screw up. And you realize when you're older, you're like, God, I used to give my mom a lot of shit for that. And now I'm using feathers from a crow to pick my teeth with. Picking my teeth with some crow feathers, I tell you, because I'm eating a lot of crow. I don't know. There's so many things I want to share with you guys and things I want to talk about because they're important and it's a big part of why I say things the way I do and I think the way I do. But then I want to respect the people involved and I don't want to share too much about their lives. So I don't know how much information to give where I'm not, again, this is my kind of my personal journal, my personal diary almost for everybody. A diary that everybody can read. So not a diary, I guess. A journal. I don't know, but I wanted to talk about anything and everything. And then I keep going back and forth on if I should do that or not. And I feel like you guys would understand me a lot more if I would just talk about some things that have happened in my life that are traumatizing and difficult. And I'm not talking about just, um, anyway, it'll be a different time. But I just hope that for those of you out there that still have your parents or a parent, I know that there are some very bad parents out there. There are some parents out there that don't deserve your time and energy at all. And if they're toxic and abusive, then of course I'm not speaking about those parents. But then there's the parents that are just human. And we need to learn to love them and cut them some slack, give them a break, and know that they're trying. And until you're a parent and you're in their shoes, it's kind of hard to criticize, And it is true what they say. Whether you do the blah, 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 roll your eyes thing or not, it is true what they say, no matter what your relationship is with your parent. When they're gone, you miss them. Whether it's you miss the fights, you miss the getting along, you miss the chaos, but I don't know. It's just, you always want what you don't have, I guess, you know? Anyway, I really hope, again, to anybody out there that is beating themselves up and has a lot of regrets and the what ifs. Let me tell you from someone who, put it this way, it'll stop you up. You'll that stuff will eat at you, and pretty soon your shoulders are hard as a rock, your jaw is hard as a rock, your stomach is in knots, and you're wearing your teeth flat from grinding them. Your wrinkles start setting in and the gray hair gets more prevalent. And you wander around your house at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you go outside and at 2, and you start cleaning your house around 5 in the morning, and you just become kind of a crazy nut job, you know? Just remember to take care of yourself, and remember that you and everybody else are human. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. And I'm listening. If you guys ever want to send me an email, let me know what's going on. Ramblings of an Insomniac 49 at Gmail. Drop me a line. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.